magic! Today, we are talking about the new Duskmourn set. Its Precon decks, the new mechanics, as well as our first impressions. This is like keep the bird a little pet.
Do we get it? Perfect. All right.
Okay, so there's a couple new mechanics with Duskmourn. Let's get your opinions. What do you think about rooms, for example?
I really like rooms because for me personally, I'm really big on like playing enchantments. So like with the room, right, you can cast it for one side or the other, the halves, right? Once you have it out in the battlefield, you can then unlock it. It's almost like a double enchantment, which, I mean, that's pretty awesome in itself.
Yeah, I think rooms can give you some cool value. There's some really cool rooms where you get 2 enchantments basically affecting your creature on a single card.
What about Manifest Dread?
So the new Manifest Dread mechanic comes most into play with the Jump Scare Precon. That commander really wants to be using this mechanic a lot. The way it works is you look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one face down as a 2/2 creature, and the other one into your graveyard. That card that you have put face down, you can then turn over for its mana cost if it's a creature.
I also love too with like Manifest Dread. It's a really good way to like filter your deck. So like if you don't want to be pulling like lands, you want to be getting more creatures out. Like to Manifest Dread can help you kind of up that chance of getting that creature you want.
And it even gives you the opportunity, say you don't want lands, if you're manifesting Dread and you're like, oh, I've got 2 lands on top of my deck, you can put one of those out as a creature. And if you have ways to buff your creatures, that land, that 2/2 creature land, is potentially stronger and more threatening than it would be if it was just your regular forest.
Okay, let's talk about survival.
So the survival mechanic really rewards you for having tapped creatures during your second main phase. It really encourages you to have a little bit more of an aggressive play style, or find ways to tap your creatures before you get to your second main phase.
What about Eerie? What does Eerie do?
Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters the battlefield, or whenever a room fully unlocks under your control, usually it's a fun ability that happens with it.
Yeah, Eerie actually works really well with the new room mechanic because you actually have whatever trigger happens twice with the room. First when you play it out as the enchantment, and then again once you unlock it. So if you have a lot of creatures with Eerie or a lot of Eerie effects, you really want a deck that is heavy with enchantments.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Impending.
So Impending is kind of similar to Suspend. Really where we think this will shine through is with the Death Toll Precon deck. So with these Impending cards, they enter with a time counter on them, but it's different because a lot of these cards are enchantments as well as whatever other type. So a lot of them are like enchantment creatures, enchantment artifacts, things like that, that have an initial thing that happens once they enter the battlefield, and then a continuous effect once they are back to their normal type. This works great with Death Toll because you're really wanting to exile multiple card types from your graveyard to really have its effect kick in, and having cards with multiple types really fuels that engine effectively.
So the first precon that we're going to get into is Jump Scare, which is super exciting. With the commander, let's just read her, so that way we can go into that. So it's Duskmourn Mystery Unraveler. So she has Landfall, and whenever a land you control enters, manifest Dread. If it's the first time this ability has resolved this turn, otherwise you may turn a permanent you control face up.
So this commander really wants you putting down lands onto the battlefield a lot. Her ability is actually kind of an evolution of the Manifest Dread ability, because normally with Manifest Dread, you can only turn creatures face up for their mana value, but with Duskmourn, you can turn lands face up, you can turn artifacts, you can turn enchantments, any permanents that you get out face down using the Manifest Dread ability, you can then turn up with her second part of her ability.
My first impression with Duskmourn, I think, is like, I love that, with it being in green-blue, that it really promotes okay, let's get as many lands out as we can, but also just with the cards that are in the deck, I'm like, man, there's some really powerful creatures in the deck, and you can kind of strategize around that. Or we have stuff that benefits landfall, and so it's really fun to see how this is gonna actually play out. And see some awesome creatures that, people are nervous of at first because they're just 2/2s. And then all of a sudden it's I'm going to pronounce it probably wrong, but AC of the Gyre Strait or something like that. Like, it's crazy. So I think it'll be fun. I'm excited to see how the mechanics work and how it goes. But
yeah, and I think Zimone has a lot of potential outside of her Precon too, just being in green-blue. There's plenty of massive creatures in green that you can just really, like the name implies, jump scare your opponents with. Just say, hey, it's just a little 2/2 guy, don't worry about it. Boom, Colossal Dreadmaw! Alright, the next Precon is Miracle Worker. Miracle Worker's commander is Amanatsu Veil Piercer. She has, at the beginning of your upkeep, Surveil 2. Then following that, each enchantment card in your hand has Miracle. Its Miracle cost is equal to its mana cost, reduced by 4. I think really just this deck loves your enchantments. And that's so fun in a blue, white, black deck.
Well, honestly, I feel like some of the best enchantments, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think they are in white, blue, black.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of enchantment synergy, for example, like Sigil of the Empty Throne. So like, where you can put 4/4 angels out for every enchantment that you play. So like, enchantments they kind of help each other, but also kind of like help your board state. So I'm actually really excited to see how this one plays out. And, just like seeing the fun enchantments that you can get for like dirt cheap.
Well, and giving her Surveil too really helps you at the beginning of each of your turns look at the top 2 cards of your library and try to get that enchantment as the first card you draw. And it's 4 less. That's really what I think is so crazy about this deck. Is, usually enchantments are very powerful, but the really strong ones can cost you anywhere of like 6 to 10 mana. Like the real game-changing enchantments, you can get those out for over half their cost in a lot of these situations. And that's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
Especially, again, like I said, blue, black, white. Some of the strongest enchantments for sure are in those colors.
Endless punishment. This is one that I'm super excited for. So let's first go over the commander. So it's Valgavoth, Harrower, of Souls. So he's got flying, he's got ward, you just have to pay 2 life. And then whenever an opponent loses life for the first time each of their turns, put a +1/+1 counter on Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls, and draw a card. So like, this is really, honestly, like, I'm so excited to play this commander.
Rebecca dibs this Precon soon as we ordered
it.
it.
Once it got released, and I was like, okay, even just seeing the commander, I already have a black-red deck, and I've been trying to build all the other colors, but like, dibs, that's mine. Anyways, so like with this deck, we'll actually get into the deck now. So with this deck, I've been kind of like looking at the cards, studying the cards. They are really great at like pinging your opponents. Like really just like unblockable damage, just like, oh, you just take a little bit of 1 damage here, 1 damage there. You have some cards in there that like your opponents can't gain life. So it's like your commander's gonna get big really quickly. And it's not even your damage. If your opponents deal damage to one of your other opponents, you get to put a +1/+1 counter and draw a card. So it's like card draw advantage and buffing your commander almost every turn. It's out of control like really quickly. So I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, I don't know much about the actual cards in this deck, but I will just say that the artwork in this deck, it's so cool. Rebecca is really our horror fan in this group.
Yes.
And she has been drooling over the artwork on some of these cards. They're really cool. They're very cool. The final Duskmourn Precon is Death Toll. Death Toll's commander is Winter, Cynical Opportunist. Winter has Death Touch, and whenever Winter attacks, mill 3 cards. Their then ability is Delirium. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile any number of cards from your graveyard, with 4 or more card types among them. If you do, put a permanent card from among them onto the battlefield with a finality counter on it. A finality counter just means that when it dies, it goes into exile instead of your graveyard. And really, this deck, I think, was the one that was most cautiously optimistic in our playgroup, because it does require kind of big brain plays. If you're milling yourself, you have to be smart with
Yeah.
really your play style and the cards that you are getting then out of your graveyard. You really have to make sure that you are getting the most value out of the fact that you are milling yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like with this one, it does like taking a look at like the creatures and even just like the enchantments, they do have ways to like bring stuff that you have milled out of your graveyard besides your commander's ability. But I think like it's kind of like that cycle of like, okay, I need to mill. Okay, now I might be milling too much, and like getting stuff out of your graveyard will help you not like run out of like lands, you know, and get what you need, I guess. But yeah, I would say like this one, we have all been like cautiously optimistic. I'm hoping that it's awesome. I kind of want to see it pop off, to be honest. But yeah, with this one, I'm like, that's too big brain for me.
Yeah, because you're really playing your graveyard as almost a second hand in a lot of these scenarios, trying to determine what's the most value in your graveyard. I would say though, despite that kind of hesitancy that we have experienced in our group, this deck is awesome. It has so many. I've never seen a Precon deck with artifact lands in it before. I don't know how rare artifact lands are, but this is the first one I've ever seen that actually has such a wide variety of cards that aren't just a single type. You got your enchantment creatures, you got your artifact lands. There's just so much variety in this deck, including 4 planeswalkers.
Yeah. I thought the planeswalkers were really cool.
There's a lot of
want it for the myriad lands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there is a lot of value in this deck, despite how intimidating the commander might appear at first.
I'll also say too, like, this isn't just for this one in particular, but all of the secondary commanders look pretty stinking cool. Even like Red Maw, Creaking Nest, right? Just different play style, but it looks like so much fun. Like, I mean, like, it'd be fun to even like, have a gameplay of just like, okay, there goes the bird. Where it's like, okay, this is the same deck, but it's gonna play very differently depending on which commander that you pick. And I just think like, it's just so fun. I think that they really did a great job with all of the commander decks. And the secondary commanders too were just really well thought out. So it'll be fun.
I think really just kind of in summary with these Precons, I think we're all kind of in agreement that the endless punishment, we're thinking right now out of all of these decks is the most competitive or threatening, maybe.
I think it is because, Red has a lot of ways to just cause damage. It doesn't even have to be through combat, right? Just to be like, okay, we're just pinging everybody. Well, and Black does a great job with that too.
And having a flyer that gives you card draw as your commander, you can get out some massive commander damage really quick. I think after that one, we're kind of all in agreement that we think the Amanatu deck, the Miracle Worker, is probably next on the list for us for kind of most competitive or most interesting even. Because even though the Precon deck looks pretty good, we think Amanatu has so much potential outside of her Precon deck to have some of just the craziest shenanigans.
Well, just having like upgrades too, like what's the card I'm thinking? Omniscience. Mm-hmm. It's a really like it's a really heavy cost enchantment, which means that like, okay, you can just cast spells for nothing. Like, it's just so like if you can get that out, it's just like, oh, now all of my enchantments are super free, and it can lead to more and more combo pieces. I just think that it's a really unique commander. And
we think she can snowball. We think she can snowball pretty hard.
More.
Might be interesting to even just build an enchantment deck around Amanatu.
Oh yeah.
And then after that, we kind of can't really decide between Death Toll and Jump Scare. I think our group kind of agrees they have kind of a similar play style, kind of a similar even goal in mind is of getting out creatures for free almost. I do think though Jump Scare is maybe just a little bit higher because of the landfall triggers. You're really wanting to get lands out as much as possible, and having mana ramp and more
makes it a lot easier to get those landfall triggers.
And just kind of what we said with Death Toll, it can be kind of intimidating. It does require a lot of thinking So we think that one right now we're putting at the bottom of our list for most competitive. But I think it's also, it could be interesting. It could be surprising. We're very, very excited to try all of these decks.
They all look great.
Yeah.
Who's gonna win the gameplay?
Who's gonna win the gameplay? Are we putting bets out right now? So,
just kidding.
So
no, I swear.
So spoilers a little bit. I'm playing Death Toll. Rebecca is playing Endless Torment.
Or Punishment.
Punishment.
Yeah.
Endless. Rebecca's playing Endless.
Endless something.
Benson is playing the Amanatsu Miracle Worker deck, and then Zachary is going to be playing the Jump Scare deck. Is that all correct? I think.
I don't know.
I
mean, I hope that I'm gonna win, but the thing is, too, is I'm like, Zach's a professional rascal, so I don't even know.
I think knowing our play group, Rebecca's gonna come out of the gates hot, but maybe get knocked out really early because of that. I think Rebecca either has the most potential of either winning or losing first. Yes. I think the Jump Scare deck and the Death Toll deck have a great chance of pulling out a surprise win, maybe a little bit out of nowhere. And I think Amanatsu is somewhere maybe a little bit in the middle, where she can just be consistent across the board during every stage of the game, and maybe because of that, people won't really analyze her as a threat until it's too late and she has pulled off the win. So I'm going to say Rebecca is going to win this one.
Fingers crossed. Okay, so this is now just kind of like our general impressions of just what we think about the set. Honestly, I love the horror theme. You know, like, I mean, it just reminds me of just, like, what lurks in the depths, right? And just, like, the things that, like, keep you up at night. I love it. I just totally love it. It's, the artwork looks great. I think, like, a lot of the abilities look awesome. I think it's gonna be, honestly, a really fun set that, like, you know, really gets, like, that, like, spooky vibes.
Yeah. And it's perfect for this time of year, too. You know, I think it'd be really fun to go to your friend's annual Halloween Magic the Gathering get-together, and you pull out one of these decks that is really based around the horror themes. I think, honestly, too, some of the artwork that I've seen, it has kind of that, like, 70 horrors vibe. I love that aesthetic. I'm not a huge horror fan myself, but the artwork in this one, I think, is really cool.
Well, they usually, like, with, like, a lot of, like, spooky, scary Halloween movies, a lot of the more iconic ones are either like were made in the 80s/90s or they take place in the 80s or 90s. And so I get what you're saying. Like, I think it's so fun, and it really just has like an awesome callback to, like, you know, really just like famous, even like scary movies, right? Or scary TV shows, right? Stranger Things, Michael Myers, Halloween, sorry. Freddy Krueger.
There's actually even that scary baby thing from Toy Story, the first one. Or one inspired by that. Inspired. Which I think that definitely traumatized me when I was a kid watching that.
Oh yeah. I just think, like, honestly, the set looks really cool. I think the abilities look pretty awesome.
I think the Precons are gonna be a lot of fun to play.
Oh yeah. I think that honestly this is a set that I will want to pick up. And even if, like, I don't get, like, the milk crab, right? The one that, like, makes your opponent's mill 10, but it's a base toughness one. I still think, like, it will be a set that I'll want to pick up. I think it's fun. I think it's unique. And I'm very big on, like, horror themes. Yeah, I love pink. I love unicorns, but I love the scary, like, in the night stuff. It really is so cool. I think it's definitely a set that I'll pick up.
And I think there's a lot of cards in here, too, that I'm thinking of putting in my other decks to help upgrade them and improve them as well. So definitely worth looking into the new cards and their mechanics and seeing how they can tie into your other decks that aren't even really Duskmourn decks.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching! If this video has you raving for more content, make sure to like and subscribe!
Good bird.